And hey, I'm TJ Schwenke, and welcome to the Outdoor Quest Zoomcast. And today, as our special guest, we have Mark Zimmermann from Select Worldwide Hunting Safaris. And Mark, Vanessa and I have been on a pile of hunts that you've arranged for us.
Yeah, it's been fun. But can't wait to do our next one.
Yeah, when's that going to be?
I'm thinking, well, with COVID, who knows right now, but I'm thinking probably later this year or anytime next year should be all good.
So you book primarily in Africa and New Zealand, and both in the Southern Hemisphere, obviously. And that's kind of the place. They're in the middle of their hunting season right now, and the timing couldn't be worse, could it?
It's, I mean, so many people are going through tough times with this COVID thing, but definitely down there. I mean, their livelihood comes in at this time of the year, and they got nobody that can travel there. So it's really hard on them.
So like, say like your New Zealand outfitter, for example, like when does his season usually start?
Well, he starts towards the end of February and basically goes through to about the beginning of July. Now, this year, it hit right at the worst time, and most hunters are already booked. Flights are booked, and they're planning on heading there. They bought groceries for the entire year. You know, they've got stags ready to go. It's a big business, and really, this is the most booked time of the year. So he got shut down, and he's got all those stags. They got to feed the stags. They got nobody coming there. People are panicking with flights, and it's just overall, it's just a terrible situation that happened.
So what are most outfitters doing down there right now for their clients? I mean, obviously the clients aren't allowed to come because of the country's restrictions.
Well, I guess they're trying to reschedule for next year, basically. They were hoping that they could get some hunts in July and August this year, which would be their winter. But it doesn't even look like they can get the hunters there at all this year. So what they're doing is they're contacting the hunters that have booked for next year. And COVID will certainly affects everybody's bottom line. And what they'll do is find out which hunters are serious about coming next year and which some will cancel. And then they'll try to reschedule all the hunters from this year and get them into next year, and or try to move it all around over the next 2 or 3 years to get everybody taken care of.
Well, that's got to be the big challenge for the outfitters there. I mean, you got a guy like you're booking for in New Zealand, like he's doing several hundred hunters a year, and he's booked not just this year, but he's booked next year, and he's probably got clients booked the year after that. So all of a sudden, how do you fit them all into a couple of years?
Well, logistically, you probably can't. What he's doing, like you said, he's phoning clients that are booked. You can't put this year's in automatically next year and bump everybody again a year back down the road, because he has people booked in for next year. What he'll do is find out how many people are actually serious because of COVID, whether they're actually able to go next year, or maybe they would have to wait a year or two down the road. They can't afford it now due to financial circumstances and such with everything that's happened. Find out who is able to come, and then try to fit as many as you can in those slots for next year, and or then it would be 2022.
What a stressful time, though. I mean, not only has all this been canceled, but it's just the uncertainty of it all. Like, really, they have no idea, like, whether it's going to be next month or next year kind of thing right now. And most of the outfitters we've talked to recently, they can deal with the known. It's the unknown that is just driving them crazy. They have no idea how to plan.
It's exactly right. I mean, we were supposed to be in Tanzania this July on a leopard hunt, and that obviously has now been postponed. And we're hoping to go in November, but I can't even book a flight yet in November. Even they're booking flights into August, but they're not planning that far ahead in case a second or a third wave hits. You just don't know. It is completely uncertain times.
Well, and Tanzania is kind of a unique story too, because Tanzania, the country, is actually opening up June 1st tomorrow. But, it's getting there that is going to be the hard part. And, right now, if you leave Canada coming back, you're going to have to do a 14-day quarantine. So there's a lot of things to consider, even once these countries, because it's not like all countries are together on this. Everybody's kind of got their own rules, their own regulations, and it's trying to get them all to mesh. That's going to be so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying to get the economies all started up and the flights going, and knowing what they're going to be like. I mean, it could be flights become a lot more expensive, or, seating arrangements in planes, what they're going to do there. There is so many unknowns of what's going on everybody's hoping that things will get back to normal as soon as they can. And you are starting to see some things happen, right? Obviously, in Canada here, the provinces are starting to open up little by little, depending on where they're from, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But what it's going to look like 6 months from now, nobody knows, right? We hopefully don't take a backward step and it gets worse. Hopefully, these things progress nicely and we kind of get back to whatever our new normal will be.
don't say new normal in front of Vanessa; she'll cut your throat. But
Yeah, I mean it's unprecedented times, and it just doesn't hit the hunting industry. It's hit everybody,
yeah,
right, in different ways. And I mean, I'm thinking the Canadian outfitters themselves. They got no bear hunters coming up this spring, or no Americans coming up bear hunting. The sport fishing industry, there's so many lodges that have no people coming in. The taxidermy guys don't get the work from that. The supplier guys like me as well don't get the work as a result. So yeah, it feeds down the line. It's big.
yeah. So South Africa, I mean, you've got some outfitters in South Africa as well. And I mean, I know the Ministry of Tourism there just announced a couple of days ago that they wouldn't be allowing international tourists till February. I mean, obviously that's open to change, I'm sure, but boy, that makes things tough. But South Africa's got the added problem now. South African Airlines is kind of in limbo right now, whether it's going to be operating or not.
Yeah, that's a whole new one to deal with. Again, we're booking hunts next year for South Africa in March and April, in which Cindy and I will be going and traveling with some of our hunters there. And we're hoping, I guess it would be Lufthansa or British Airways or something along that line. We'll be flying at that point to there. Yeah, it's you just don't know. It's very frustrating because it's an industry that needs help, and people want to go there, and people that can. And it's right now we just can't get there. We just can't get there. We can't get back. We don't know whether it'll be in isolation when we get back under the new norm if things open up. Like there's lots of questions that'll be probably answered in the next 3 or 4 months, but right now we just don't know.
Well, I mean, do you look at the guys in South Africa too? I mean, those guys, they were obviously holding a lot of animals for this year's season. So now those are either going to have to be culled or fed. A lot of the money from hunts throughout Africa goes to anti-poaching. A lot of the money from hunts goes to, the villages, to the local families. And I mean, that's all gone right now. So I don't know if we've seen anywhere near the ramifications yet that we're getting. I mean, it's inconvenient that North Americans can't go there to hunt, but
Yes.
What's happening there is terrible.
Well, it depends. I guess depends on the year that they have and how the rains are, whether they get a drought or not, whether the animals have enough feed. They typically will have to do some sort of cull at some point. I mean, the industry does so much. I mean, it's hunting industry is conservation. A lot of people won't understand that. Without the hunting industry, there is no conservation. The animals have value, and that's what keeps them there. When we've been there, I mean, we just as you've seen. Meat goes to villages and to peoples and orphanages and you name it. It's the source of protein, and hunters' dollars provide that. And right now, I know that my outfitters, I mean, they've got less staff, right? So those people aren't working. It just down the line, it's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I know Vanessa, we've been there a few times when we've gone and visited, local schools for children, orphanages, things like that, taken meat with us, and they're literally their only supply of protein is from hunters. And I think that's the thing. You see a lot of anti-hunters on the sideline cheering because there's no hunting in Africa this year, but boy, I don't think they realize just the ramifications to the actual people of Africa.
Yeah, it was interesting. It does so much for the people there. People think, as North Americans, we should not be trying to manage wildlife in Africa. They know what's going on. I mean, they've done it very successfully in Namibia and South Africa. Rhino populations are up, all that stuff. Where they've taken away sport hunting, Kenya, you can see the animal population has decreased tenfold. So hunting does a service for the animals. I mean, yes, it's hunting, but I mean, it does so much.
Yeah,
People don't realize. I just saw the news this morning, and there were some protesters at the Cargill meat plant right here in just by High River, and they're talking about we shouldn't be even killing the animals, right? But not everybody is a vegetarian, and what we're doing is, the animals have to be and killed and eaten, and it's a reality. So do it the sensible way and make it all work. And what they do in Africa actually does work very well.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, and you only have to go there once to see it work, and it's pretty easy to be an armchair expert, sitting in London or somewhere like that. But once you go there and see how it works, and I mean, I still do find it funny. People are always like, "Well, what happens to the meat?" Well, what do you think happens to a meat
Yeah,
in a population that's a country that's overpopulated to start with, and protein is probably the most precious commodity there is. It gets eaten.
absolutely. Everything, everything gets eaten. It's they the meat is so precious to the people. So if people think that as North Americans or Europeans or Americans, and we go down there and hunt, and logistically, if we could bring back some of the meat, we would. There just is no way to do it, right? So the meat just doesn't get. Most people envision us as trophy hunters, right? So we're out there, taking a cape or a life-size skin and the horns, and we leave everything there to rot. It's absolutely not that way. The meat gets utilized by everybody. It's also the cheapest form of meat for the local people on top of it, right? So, I mean, if I could, I'd love to bring back a cooler of meat, some eland or some gemsbuck, right? Right? If I could ship it on a plane with me and it was logistically possible, I would. Just that regulations around the world just don't allow that.
Well, I mean, the people of Africa are probably happy you can't take any home with you because they get to eat it. But I mean, and you're right. I mean, once you've eaten eland or gemsbok or something like that, you'll never want to try any other meat from North America. That's for sure. I mean, it's so good.
Yes. I mean, I've been in caribou camps as well in the Northwest Territories, in which Americans and Canadians and Europeans are up there hunting for caribou in the past, and every scrap of meat is taken. And it's sometimes you could bring back the meat there, but the people there, I mean, the guides and their families back in the territories, I mean, they survived off of that. It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think people who've never experienced it just have such a narrow view of really how it all works, and especially on a continent like Africa. And we always say one of the things about Africa, I mean, everything in Africa has to pay for itself. And if that wildlife isn't paying for itself, it's going to be replaced with domestic livestock, or it's going to be replaced with crops or something. Every square inch of land there has to pay for itself. So I mean, if we want wildlife to continue there, and I mean, certainly the photography industry is an important industry to wildlife, but it can't support wildlife on its own. And people are always like, well, photography does. Well, yeah, photography does a great job, but so does hunting. And why not conserve 3 or 4 times as much habitat and wildlife by the two? Hunting just isn't bad, but it gets pretty frustrating. And even some hunters that have never been there are really bad for talking about it too.
The interesting thing is I do quite a few shows in Canada in which I set up a booth for my hunting places in Africa. And once in a while, some people will come by and they want to talk about it, right? And I can kind of describe Africa in a couple of different ways. You kind of have a wildlife ranch kind of in Africa, right, in which you're hunting on people's properties. And you have wild Africa, and people's perception on occasion is that we're out there killing every animal in the area, and that's certainly not the case. And if I took wild Africa, let's say, and we had a land area, let's say the size of the city of Calgary, and I'm an outfitter in there, and I'm bringing in some hunters, and with myself, I have game management people, and I have people watching the land and patrolling the land to make sure that poachers aren't coming in, and you name it. So we will take some surplus animals out of that landmass, let's say the size of Calgary, and we may take out a kudu or a lion or some of the plains game animals. But we can't take everything out of there, obviously, because there won't be nothing left, right? So we actually protect 95% of the animals that are there and take out a few surplus. If you remove us from wild Africa, so you take away the outfitter and you take away the hunters, and then all of a sudden other people that are involved in protecting that land, nobody's there, and then the poachers move in and they'll kill everything because the animals have no value to them. So you have a hunter and outfitter working the area, and we protect the wildlife. We may take some, absolutely, there's no question, but we protect 95% of the animals that are there. And if we take us out, there's nothing protecting them. People don't understand that. They go, well, the animals will be far better off. And that's absolutely not the case.
No.
Those animals will get massacred, whether it's females, males, babies, you name it. It is just food, right?
Yeah.
Food or something to sell. So the hunter actually does great things for wildlife in Africa. It actually protects it.
Well, I mean, I look at your area in Tanzania. Vanessa and I were there a couple of years ago,
Yes.
the outfitter you work with
Yep.
there. And I mean, Tanzania was just, I mean, it was terrible for poaching, especially. And
Yes.
now that there's outfitters in there all the time. And I mean, be what it is, a lot of their trackers were probably some of the best poachers back then because they were the best hunters, right? But now those guys aren't poaching anymore. The only reason they're poaching is to make money. I mean, it's not that they hate wildlife or anything else. They just want to make money. And so what they're doing now is going to work for the hunting companies. But the government's also involved there. Like, I mean, the government sets the quotas on everything. Like, I was shocked how low the hippo quota was when we were there. And I mean, that's one thing I learn every time I go to Africa is I realize how little I know about Africa. I think the first time you go, you're the smartest about Africa. And after that, you realize how little it is. And when we went to Tanzania, I had no idea that hippos came up on land and grazed just like Cape Buffalo do or all the plains game. And probably within a kilometer on either side of that river, there was not a single blade of grass. And that was strictly from hippo. Crazy. They'd had a bad drought a couple of years before that. And there was hippo just dead hippo skulls and bones everywhere from hippos that had literally starved to death. So, it's a great management tool as well.
Absolutely. It's like they're like a giant lawnmower, right? And they like to eat a lot of that stuff. So it's so controlled, and it's wildlife friendly when it comes overall to the overall population. That, again, it's not in our people. They think that we get the rap that we're out there trying to kill everything. We're not. We're actually just trying to kill a few surplus animals, right? Older animals, older males, animals that will die in a few years, right? So you get the younger males coming up, the breeding population's better, everything. It's great for wildlife. It really is.
Oh, and yeah, wildlife doesn't exist without it. And, I think anybody who tries to argue that's a total idiot because it just can't. Like, there's got to be that value to wildlife. So you and Cindy are basically a booking agent. So you're kind of that step between the hunter and the outfitter. Really, what's your role there?
Well, I guess Cindy and I have been lucky enough to travel the world and find some unique hunting places that we think people in North America, or let's say people from Canada that we deal with, would be interested in going. What we've done is basically the homework for them. We've found places depending on what the client is looking for, whether they're looking for upscale or in between or free range or, a completely wild experience. We can kind of send them in a direction that we think works. We do the homework for them, the fact that we can do all the gun permits for them out of Canada and foreign gun permits there. We can help get their trophies back. We know how the system works there so that basically you can enjoy your hunt. You don't have to worry about anything. We take care of it for you. I think that's a real positive thing because there's so many things to know about going for the very first time. Going to Africa, we've been lucky enough, we've been 14 times, and there's so many outfitters there. And what do you choose? So, I mean, do you want to be a hunter that hunts in 4 quarters of land, or do you want to be a hunter who hunts in 25, 30,000 acres? And how is it set up? Are you going from property to property to property to property, or are you hunting one central location? How fair chase? Like we want, Cindy and I only believe that we want something that we want to know that when the hunter comes back, he's had a very positive experience and nothing negative. So we know, and we research and we go to and visit these places so that when we know we send a hunter that they're taken care of. So basically we make it simple for you. We've done the homework for you, and the price is the same, whether you book through us or whether you book through the outfitter. You just get the added advantage of booking through us, and we're there from the beginning, basically from when we meet to the very end when you get back to get your trophies back to Canada. We basically become friends with pretty much every one of our clients. and they book again and they try something different.
And I think that is a critical step that, especially you guys do. I mean, you're very hands-on with your clients. And, I think a lot of people, Africa is, once you've been 14 times, or I think we've been a dozen times, it's still an adventure, but it's not that scary adventure. But that first time, it's pretty stressful. And, you're traveling and everybody's heard so many bad stories about Africa and everything else, most of which are totally the media blowing things out of proportion. But it's nice to have that safety net and just people that, you can rely on, somebody you can talk to here in Canada as well. Before you go, when you get there, I mean, you guys do run a full service. I mean, like literally when you walk off the plane, there's a guy there with a sign with your name on it. He helps you get through customs. He helps you get your gun taken care of. If you have to stay overnight, he takes you to a place. If you have to get to another plane, he gets you there. So there's really nothing left to chance, with you guys. Just like you say, you've done it so many times. You can help with booking flights, let them know which flights are the best, get the best deals for them. Certainly firearms are a big deal too. And like you guys said, you've got that permitting dialed right in. So I know all the trips, Vanessa and I have done, I don't know how many trips with you guys now. It's been a lot. And
one or two more yet, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. No, don't doubt about that. But I mean, everything always goes seamlessly, and, seamlessly in Africa is a big deal. South Africa, I think, is a great place to get your feet wet for everyone. But you start traveling to places like Tanzania and places like that, it's a lot bigger dollars. The infrastructure is not as good. So I think at that point, even more experienced travelers still can really benefit from your service.
Absolutely. I know how I felt even once my first trip to Mexico, my first trip to Africa. There's people trying to grab your bags, and you're going, "What's going on?" And you don't know where to go, and you've got guns, and you got to get your permit signed, and you're going, you're just, it's total panic. Well, it's taken care of, because you basically will take all the permitting stuff, so everything gets there. We've never lost a firearm with any of our clients. We've never even had a firearm damage, anything like that. We have a meet and greet service. Basically, as soon as you get off the plane, there's a guy dressed nice with your sign on it, right? So pay a little additional for the service, but when you get there at the early flight, and there's 4 jets that come in, and there's 2,000 or 3,000 people in a lineup trying to go through customs, and you become the Michael Jordan, right? And you walk do it right up to the front, and you go through, and you're going, "Wow, that just saved me 2 hours of standing in line." And the permit gets signed immediately, and then you're off to your destination. So it works really, really well. And like you said, the little extra service, I mean, it's well worth it.
Well, and I mean, getting the animals back too can be a little bit stressful. And I mean, you guys have kind of got that mastered. Maybe just go through a bit of the process. Like, once you leave Africa, you obviously don't leave with your animals. What happens to them?
So the animals will stay at the outfitters for a certain period of time, where the skins are basically dried and the skull's kind of taken care of. And then it'll go to another facility in which they can do dip and pack. So basically the skins and the skulls are treated in order to leave the country. Most of the stuff will go through Europe, so it has to meet certain requirements. So vets have to look at it, paperwork has to be signed, permits have to be done. The animals have to get packed and crated so that they don't get damaged, and then they'll get shipped here. Now it's been now probably close to 5 years in which the Canadian government, which the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, has deemed that none of the paperwork is acceptable from Africa, so they're requiring a second disinfection back in Canada. That now has to get done, and we can get that taken care of as well. So having the right people in place as well there, so that it gets done quickly. We can usually get it done in about 120 days if there's no unforeseen circumstances. And you have your stuff back to Canada. I mean, there's people that are still, some people have been waiting 2 or 3 years from dealing with other people, right? And you spend a lot of money to go there, and you want the whole experience, right? So, and then you want to get your trophies back, obviously, here, so that you can enjoy them and put them up and whatever you want with them. But we have the pieces in place there, so you get your stuff back quick.
And I think that's a big thing. And you're right. Like, I've heard lots of horror stories too about, people waiting 2 or 3 years, and there's really no reason for that, unless something really unforeseen comes up. But, even with CITES animals, I mean, it can sometimes increase it a little bit, but so CITES animals are interesting too, though. some CITES animals only need an export permit from the country, but there's other animals that require a CITES import permit. And I didn't really even know that myself until I took my leopard in Tanzania. And then, you and Cindy helped us get our import CITES as well. And it was something I had not a clue about. Like, I wouldn't even have known where to start.
Correct. So there are some animals that are Appendix 2, I believe it is, on the CITES list. And at that point in time, you need to have an import permit from our Canadian government to bring it. So they'll apply for an export CITES permit. They'll send you that. Then with that, I can apply for the import permit from Canada. Once I get that, I send that, and then the stuff gets on its way. But the process, there's a lot of paperwork involved. And another thing is dealing with the right outfitter, again, reputable, in which they make sure that the client stuff is taken care of because they want repeat business, right? So instead of dealing with, let's say, a slighter standard or somebody who's not as dedicated on that part, is not necessarily the way to go to save a few dollars when it comes right down to it. Going somewhere reputable in which it's treated like a business, and they want to make sure that you get your stuff back, and there's, everybody's working together to have that happen. So yeah, everybody's not the same, so choose carefully.
Well, and I mean, we had our taxidermist on a Zoomcast here last week, and he was talking about some of the horror trophies he's had come back from Africa, like so poorly skinned and everything else. But the one thing he did comment on was the fact how well ours were always taken care of. And that's something that's kind of out of your control once you're there again. So, we talked a lot about, getting an outfitter that offers a good hunt, but you also need an outfitter that gives that good follow-up service. I mean, you want to make sure his skinners do a first-class job. You want to make sure that, the taxidermist that it goes to for dipping and packing, if he's arranging that, also does a first-class job. So there's a lot of things when you're picking an outfitter rather than, the guy who's the cheapest or the guy who has the biggest animals. There's so much more to it.
Well, there is. I'm in the taxidermy business myself, and I understand what Curtis is talking about. Getting the skin back so you can actually do something with it is important, right? And the horns, where they're not boiled down to nothing, where you lose inches and the skins are not treated properly and you get hair slipped back in Canada. That doesn't do you any good. So yeah, having the right outfitter who does all the service, not just the hunting, and takes care of the skin and gets the stuff back here, it's important.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys are interesting too. I think a lot of booking agents just kind of book for whoever, that they can book for. But you and Cindy are pretty diligent about going to visit outfitters, checking out their facilities, hunting with them. Some of your outfitters, you've probably hunted 6 or 8 times with.
Well, we almost get an email these days every day from an outfitter that wants us, wants us to represent, especially in these COVID times, because everybody's looking for clients. But it's very important for Cindy and I that we feel comfortable sending somebody there, because people have come to us at a show and their dream is to go there for the first time. Most of the people we send are going for the first time, and they've been saving for years and years and years and years to do this. And there's certainly a monetary value involved in going there and getting back. It's not little money, it's bigger money, and it's extra money that you've saved for. So we don't want to have somebody come back and say to us, we had a terrible experience and we weren't really happy. So that's why Cindy and I are diligent about who we choose. And we've added a new outfitter in the Eastern Cape, the Lapa Safaris, and you've been there as well. And so we're happy to represent them. It's going to be great.
And I think a great thing to bring up here too is I think a lot of people think, okay, South Africa's all the same. And I think it's easy to believe that. A lot of people think all of Africa is the same, but just South Africa itself couldn't be more diverse. And so, when people come to you, I think it's unfortunate. A lot of people, the first thing they want to know is the price. And to me, that is probably the least important thing. Obviously, it's got to be within your budget, but all the outfitters are close enough in price that, it's not going to be your biggest consideration. But, you've got outfitters that are a 5-star level of service. I mean, their accommodations are unbelievable. They've got a couple chefs on staff. It's an unbelievable experience outside the hunting. You've got other outfitters that have very comfortable accommodations, but, you're not catered to. There's no 5-star meals or anything else. And neither one of those is right or wrong. It's what the client really wants. So, I mean, if you got a couple going on, their anniversary trip to South Africa and they want to wine and dine and make it a really romantic dinner, well, yeah, the 5-star. But you got a couple guys just want to go hunt hard and still be comfortable. Like there's no place in Africa that you're not comfortable. They take great care of you no matter how low the level of service is. But so I think those are the questions that you really need to start to ask before you ever talk about prices. Decide what you want out of that hunt.
Yeah, it's something that we do a lot of is we actually want to know what you want for an experience. And then we try to suggest the place that we think would fit you best. I mean, we have a place up in the Northwest province, and it's in the Kalahari, and it's a lot of bush, and it's a big property, but it's 5-star. It's very nice, and they have quite a few of the big 5, and they do lions and stuff like that. So sometimes just to even hear a lion at a place is another part of the experience I found when it's 4:00 in the morning and woo, you hear that guttural roar and you go, holy, your eyes are as big as saucers. And then we have another place towards the Kimberley area, and it's got some bush, but it also has a little bit more open. So if you're into long range shooting, right, it's a fantastic place for that because it's a little bit more open. So if you want to dial in and shoot some animals, let's say with a long range gun, because that's what you're into, then we could certainly set you there. And then we've got Eastern Cape, we've got Lalapa, we've got certainly some unique possibilities there. There's mountainous, there's some free range animals there to go hunting, right? Which you've done with with your kudu and your eland and your nyala. So, and it's very mountainous and rugged country, and it's more like hunting ranch land. It's a ranch land area like Alberta, and you're hunting farmland, right? So it depends on what the person wants as far as the experience. So we can kind of set something for you, and we have different budgets depending on what you're looking for. And right now, Africa, I'm sure there'll be some pretty good deals coming forward because in the next year or so, because everybody's going to be hurting, not just the outfitters in Africa, basically all around the world. So yeah, it's tough times. I feel sorry for businesses, and I'm in one of the businesses myself. But it's very difficult to try to navigate through things right now and to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. But just going back to that though, I mean, I think we hear a lot about there's high fence hunting and there's true free range hunting. And I think a lot of people kind of poo-poo the high fence stuff. And it can in a lot of ways be more difficult. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and I really look down upon anyone who tries to sell it as what it's not. But the high fence experience itself, I mean, that fence is there more to manage the game. And those are typical in areas of high agriculture production or, higher populations. Like those animals can't run free. So the unique thing there is a lot of times, I mean, those animals are hunted every day of the week, for hunting season. So they do get pretty wild. A lot of those areas are really heavily, the cover is so heavy, like your place up in the Kalahari. I mean, seeing 10 feet in front of you is pretty hard some days. I know there was days we were walking 15, 20 kilometers there. So the hunting is challenging, and don't ever let you tell anyone it's not. Those fencers are there to manage, and to think that it's like a canned hunt or anything like that is totally ridiculous. And that's a choice that the hunter has to make himself, but make it based on the facts. But with that said, there is also places, if you're really hung up on doing free range, hunting indigenous animals where they've existed for, hundreds of thousands or, hundreds or thousands of years kind of thing, that opportunity exists too. And it's just figuring out what you want out of that hunt. And, I've written several articles on this. I know we've done a lot of seminars on it, and people always kind of come away from that kind of surprised. Up in the Kalahari, I mean, that's about as flat sand, thorn brush country as you'll ever go in. You get out of the Eastern Cape, you're hunting free range Barbary sheep at 8,000 feet. They get minus 20 temperatures down there in the wintertime. So it's as different as Alberta is, right from the prairies to the mountains. And it's just figuring out what you want out of that experience. And I think going with an open mind, I think, the very first time Vanessa and I went, it was like, it had to be 100% free range. We had all these things and we had a great hunt and we found it. But once we got over there, we learned a lot too. And, and I think mostly we realized how stupid we were about all our preconceived notions about Africa.
Well, it's easy to be a keyboard warrior from Canada and have all your preconceived conceptions of what things are. In dealing with high fence places, I mean, it's really important let's say, to choose properly. So choose something that's large, and be aware of, what somebody says. 20,000 acres is a good sized piece of property, but hunting something that's 4,000 or 5,000 acres, and you're going to do that for 10 days.
Yeah.
When you're actually driving that, it's actually not that big a property. So the smaller that the place is, the more canned it feels. And being, I guess for me, being in one, let's say if you're going to do the high fence hunt, that you're not going from place to place to place to hunt certain animals. Because to me, that's not I don't want to go to Uncle Bob's place that has 4 quarters over there, 1,600 acres or whatever, and all he has is gemsbuck, right? I want to hunt that has everything running around in the property itself. It becomes more wild to me that way, and enough bush there. There's plenty of times where all of a sudden you're seeing a kudu and you go, oh my God, it's a giant. And then you get on his track and you follow, you can't catch up, right? Or they interact because there's so many tracks there and you can't find. So it's just because it's high fence doesn't mean you're going to get every single thing you want, right? Animals get away there, right? Just as much as they can get, as you can get them. But, it becomes choosing right place so the experience of hunting is actually hunting. And like I said, the Eastern Cape, I mean, they got big mountainous countries, and you've done your outlet hunt there, and I've watched your kudu hunts and eagle hunts, and it's free range. I mean, you're hunting mountains, and it's cool. Like it's good stuff. And depending on what you're looking for, they've got more of this, in the Eastern Cape, you got some of the smaller animals there, and they've got bushbuck down there, right? Because of the terrain. I mean, they've had some animals there that didn't even know existed there, like the Barbary sheep, and they got access deer, and you're going, or fallow bucks. I mean, and you're going, what? Right? So there's some cool stuff to go do. Yeah, it's, the experience is about, what you dream about Africa. And so choosing wisely. And you know what? Yeah, we started looking at other places and going to different places. And when I first started this business, I thought, well, the one place is all I need. But it really is nice to go to another place and actually do something different. And you go, because most people are pretty loyal to the outfitter that they've gone to for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And they go back. But it's not such a bad thing to go somewhere else and try a different part of Africa, right? And see something different, experience something different, see different animals, see how they do things differently. It's great. I mean, it's a good idea.
Well, and I think you're right. And you see that with a lot of people. They go to their first time to Africa, and that is the best outfitter in Africa. There's no one that can measure up. Well, there's no one that can measure up because they've never experienced anything else. And the truth is, if they'd have gone with 100 other outfitters, that would have been the best outfitter in Africa, because overall, it's a great level of service in South Africa, especially, but right through Africa. And I mean, certainly there's the odd bad operator, but for the most part, they have tourism, hunting so dialed in there that you're going to have a great experience. And, I think we hunted the Kalahari our first 2 times when we were in South Africa. And, for whatever reason, just believed that was South Africa. It was like that, right? And then our first trip down to the Eastern Cape, it was like, holy, like, where did these mountains and hills and canyons and stuff come from? So, not that either place was better or worse, but you're 100% right. Like, it'd be like coming to Alberta and hunting antelope and thinking, oh, okay, I guess, well, we've experienced all of Alberta. It's, that's how ridiculous it is. And just even the different hunting styles, I find, a lot of people who've never been to Africa again think, every animal's shot out of a truck there or something like that. And I mean, if you want to walk, if you want to spot and stalk, if you want to, there's a hunting style for everyone. And that's, again, communicating with you and Cindy, communicating with your outfitter. Like, I know when we went up to the Kalahari last time with you guys, it was like, we wanted to walk everything, just start walking blindly. And we were walking 10, 15 kilometers a day and not seeing a lot of animals just because it was so thick, and we were spooking a lot of animals, but we had a great hunt, like a phenomenal hunt. But again, that was the outfitter and you guys kind of communicating that to them. That's what we wanted.
Yep. I mean, you could be a bow hunter as well and enjoy Africa, right?
Oh,
you can do spot and stalk as well with your bow and arrow. It's not as easy for certain. You're restricted. You can hunt out of blinds, right? Both on the ground and elevated. And that's a nice way to, you get to see a lot of animals up close. I've done a lot of that there. I've been lucky enough to take quite a few animals with the bow and arrow. It's a way I enjoy hunting, but yeah, it's picking and choosing what you want to do, communicate that with your agent or with the outfitter, and really get what you want, because there's so many choices, and it can happen, and you can have the most unbelievable experience there.
My perfect African hunt is probably about spending half the time in the bow blind and half the time out spotting and stalking with the rifle. And, Africa is a great place because you can do that. But, after a day or two of sitting in the blind, I kind of get a little itchy feet, want to go out and do some walking. And, you go out and do a walking and, you'll see some animals for sure. And you'll get some animals, but then you kind of want to go back to sit in the blind for a day or two to, see hundreds of animals. And to me, if I could pick every hunt in Africa, that's what it would be. Is I'd take my rifle and my bow, and I do every trip now.
Yeah.
I take both, and to me, that is as good as it gets.
I mean, coming into the blind and you're there, and something comes in and they don't know what's going that you're there, and you're able to harvest that animal is incredible. I had a hunter in Africa last year, and I spent a bunch of time with him in the blind. And I tell you what, for 3-4 days, it was pretty slow. And you're going, oh my goodness, this is not working out. But all of a sudden, one afternoon, we're in the blind, and in comes a 44-inch sable, right?
Yeah.
And he was lucky enough, made a great shot on the sable, and everything got erased, the difficulty and all, and everybody's happy. And then he got a few more animals, and his girlfriend actually did a little bit of rifle hunting with Cindy, right? So she didn't want to be in the blind all the time. She wanted to drive around, see some animals, and she ended up hunting for the first time there. She actually never shot an animal ever, right? Until she got there, and she started with a blesbuck, and she goes, it was emotional for her. And then she goes, wow, I'm really enjoying this. So then she shot a fantastic blue wildebeest. And Cindy, my wife, also never hunted before until we went to Africa. First year we went, she watched and was that. And then the second year she decided to try it. She goes, wow, I can really understand how you guys like doing this. And now she's a hunter, right? Both around the world. So, it was just excellent to see some of that.
Well, it's kind of funny because I know both Vanessa and I've worked quite a few trade shows with you and Cindy at the booth, and invariably you'll have a couple come up and he's going to hunt, and she's like, oh no, I'm not going to hunt. And I mean, the first thing I do is laugh out loud. I mean, and not to be impolite, but I just know once she gets there, she's hunting. If she's ever thought about hunting once in her life, she's coming home, with a springbok or a blesbok at least, and maybe a lot more.
It's amazing how Africa turns you around a little bit, right? Some of the ladies who go there with their husbands, and all of a sudden they go, this looks good, and they try it, and all of a sudden they go, wow, and they see how the meat is utilized, obviously, as well, right? And it goes to the villages and orphanages and for the people there on staff, and it's just excellent. And yeah, there's so many people that, the one thing that Cindy and I like now is we actually like going with our clients when we can, and just to get to watch their faces, like for the first time when we were in Africa, and their eyes and the smiles, right? And most of our clients, they leave, they have tears in their eyes when they have to leave Africa. So it's very rewarding.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we've done a couple month-long trips to Africa, quite a few 2-week trips too, but there's never a time I wanted to go home. And I think that says a lot about Africa. It really does.
Well, it's nice. One thing's nice if you can bring, if you can set it up where you go with another couple as well. There's nothing like coming, it's getting up in the morning. You can kind of describe a day. You get up in the morning, have some breakfast, go out hunting. Sometimes in the middle of the day, you'll kind of stop because it's quite warm. The animals will settle down. You come back and have some lunch. You may have a few hours to kill. You can have a nap, or, go to the pool, and then go out hunting again in the afternoon. Nothing's better than at nighttime with your fellow hunters, the people there, and having a glass of wine and swapping stories around the fire.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it's so part of it. The friends that I've made in the hunting industry and what we're doing, I mean, they're lifelong. So we may see a client, after he's come back, and all of a sudden they'll come to the house for drinks or come for dinner, and they become friends. And sitting around that fire at nighttime and swapping stories, you can't beat that.
Well, no, you're 100% right about that. I mean, because you're kind of with whoever you're hunting with, whether it be your spouse or your hunting partner, you're kind of with them all day. So you guys have lived all the same stories. But man, just to hear somebody else's stories, it's just like reliving it. And and that's the culture in Africa is so relaxing, and you'll never go on a more relaxed hunt. And that's kind of what I tell people. I mean, you may hunt hard, really hard all day long, as hard as you'll hunt here, but you're never going to be as relaxed in the evening anywhere, I don't think, in the world as you are in Africa. You get a good acacia fire going, and some wine going, some brandies and coke kind of thing, and just sit around. There's some appies and good food, and I don't know, just the whole experience of Africa. Everybody thinks you go there to hunt and to kill some animals, and that's a big part of it. But it's once you've been once, it's not all of it.
No, it's memories that I can think of some of the stuff that we've done, some of the laughs we've had around the fire. And you grab some of that wood to throw in there, that acacia tree, I think it's right. And that's, I mean, look, you grab a piece of that wood and throw it. This stuff weighs like it's like throwing a few bricks on the fire. The wood is so heavy and has such a unique smell to it. And sitting around there and crackling and unreal. Just unreal.
Well, I think every time I go to Africa, I always tell people it's kind of like being 6 years old again, because you don't know what any of the plants are, you know what none of the bugs are, none of the animals are, and you're kind of afraid of everything. I mean, when you first go there, you think there's a snake behind every piece of grass, and there's a spider that's going to kill you and a scorpion that's going to kill you. And after you've been there for a while, you realize it's really not like that. But just that whole experience of wonderment, and I think the PHs must get tired of what's that, what's that, what's that, what's that.
Or you say that's a kudu. No, it's a gemsbuck. But the one thing to experience that I found is so unique is to watch a tracker. So I remember going for the first time, I think it was 2004, and I had shot an animal, and it ran off, and I'm going to follow this thing right and do it. I hunted for a lot of years, and I thought I know what I'm doing. And you go there and you go, oh my God, you are absolutely clueless as to what's going on when it comes to tracking animals in Africa. They can tell where the animal's running. They can see a pin drop of blood. They just seem to have a knack for something that they can see on the earth. That we can't even clue into it, right? It doesn't exist in our brain. We can't focus that. Well, I don't know what it is, but to watch them track an animal, where there's thousands of track, and they can do it whatever, and you go, he's on the wrong track. And I go, this guy has no idea what's going on. I say, you on the right track? And he goes, yeah, there's a pin drop. And you go, what? Right? So just to watch that is also worth the experience, to see those people do their thing. It's just incredible.
Oh, and it really is. I mean, I don't know how many days I spent in Africa now, 150, 200 days. And I mean, I'm a lot better hunter in Africa than the first time I went, and I'm a lot better tracker and everything else. I mean, I'm nowhere on those, but your skill levels do increase as you go. I just kind of remember the first time we went with you guys up in the Kalahari. I remember one day we were tracking a group of waterbuck, and there was one really good bull in it. And so we tracked him for about 2.5 hours. And then at some point our PH and our tracker stopped, and they were like, I think that bull and 2 cows split off, 100 yards back. And at this point I'm kind of going, okay, now we're being told an African story here. So sure enough, we go back about 100 yards, and there's some tracks splitting off, and follow those tracks for about another hour and a half. And then all of a sudden I've got a shot, at this beautiful bull waterbuck. And so I say to the PH, and this was our first trip, really, or second trip to Africa, I guess at that point, I says, what are you looking for in those tracks? So he gets down and he meticulously explains how the shadow and how the moisture and how these grains of sand, and I just said, get me a cold beer. You can do your job, and I'll do what I do best.
Well, it was a few years ago when I was there, and I had shot at a sable with my bow and arrow, and we thought I'd hit him, and I didn't. Right? We thought I'd hit and we're tracking, no blood, and he just had a little hook in a fingernail, and he could find that, right? That little hook, he could see it. I'm going, oh my goodness. And then it rained, right? And then it was easier to find the little hook, right? And then we ended up finding that sable the next day, and ended up getting him with a rifle. But yeah, the stuff that they can do is, I mean, when you went with us one time, we tracked an eland for I don't know how many miles, right? But it was
2.5 days. Yeah.
Right. Just walk. They're on the, I mean, it's unreal. It's just that they can stay steady on that track of that animal. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the sand in the Kalahari, I mean, it's easy to see a track, but that's the problem because there's 10,000 tracks plus the one you're looking for, right? And how those guys can separate it out is
Yeah,
truly amazing.
it's all track. It's like a puzzle, right?
Yeah,
There's track everywhere you go. Yeah, it's unreal. The person should experience it just to see that part and go on those walks, and you go, wow.
yeah, and every place you go in Africa, I think the hunting styles are a little different. Like you go down to the Eastern Cape, those guys can glass like no one I've ever seen in my life. They can plan stalks like no one I've ever seen in my life. It's just I think the more time you spend around good hunters, the better hunter you become. And I will say though, pretty much every place I've hunted in Africa, those guys will say, you know what, we love hunting with Canadians because you guys are better hunters than pretty well anywhere else in the world. And I think that is just because we do get to hunt a lot of days in Canada. We get to hunt a big variety of species. So I mean, it's not like we're total amateurs when we go over there, but man, you sure feel like it.
Well, it's such a nutrient rich environment as far as animals you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, most people again go with their, well, I want this or this, and let's do it by this order and that order and this order, that order. I wanted this one first, and I want this one last. And you have to go with the flow, right? Because things happen, and all of a sudden you might find the animal that you were hoping to get on day 5, you get it on day 1, right? And I've seen the list switch so often. Right? People go with, well, I want 3 animals, and they come back with 10, or I want this animal. Well, I don't want this one when I got there because I like that one better, right? So it's such a nutrient-rich environment. There's so many plains game species, and then they got some of the big 5 and the dangerous game, right? So it all depends on what you're looking for. But it's so fun.
Well, I think you're 100% right about that. I mean, set your budget and then definitely add some to it because you're going to shoot more animals when you're there. But with that said, it's a lot of the really inexpensive animals that are sometimes the best hunts. We always kind of look at the iconic species like the kudu and the eland and the gemsbok and stuff like that. But some of this, like the springbok and the impala. Last time when we were down on the Eastern Cape, we were hunting bushbuck, and you had a great bushbuck hunt. It was something we really wanted. I got a great bushbuck that morning, and so we kind of went for a drive, and we ended up spotting a common reed buck, which I had never thought about shooting in my life. But great buck, free range. But you don't find many free range common reed buck in South Africa. Yeah. And our outfitter said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And trophy fee was reasonable, and it turned out to be a phenomenal hunt. So you're right. Keep an open mind about stuff when you go there. Because, I think hartebeest to me is one of the classic ones. Everybody's like, why would you want to shoot a hartebeest? They're so ugly. Well, they are.
Yeah.
But
or a blue wildebeest.
Yeah. But they're right. To me, hartebeest are probably one of the most challenging animals you can hunt in Africa. And they're just like hunting whitetails. They're that elusive at times. And I think once you get around them for a day or two, you're like, I really want to hunt one of those if you're a hunter.
Yeah, well, we were hunting in Africa. One of your both your and I friend, and he wanted a zebra, right?
Yeah,
he didn't get one in a 10-day hunt, right?
But aren't they just like a horse, Mark?
Man, those things go like the truck stops or whatever. They hear a whisper and choof, they're gone, and all you see is tail, right? And they don't stop in a little while. They go woof, gone. So yeah, it's so different. Go with an open mind. Certainly try to get the animals that you're looking for, but be aware that there may be something, and all of a sudden when you actually see it in person, right, you may go, oh, I really like that, and then be happy with that. And you're right, there's some interesting animals there that don't necessarily aren't the most beautiful, but they're very iconic for Africa.
Yeah, and just some of the unique experiences. Like we've hunted caracal with hounds. We've hunted blue duiker over little tiny dishes of water in the jungle, and those are all like such unique experiences that I don't think most people ever think of when they first start thinking about hunting Africa. But once you get there and you find out, and every time you go, it's we got to do that next time. And last time we were down on the Eastern Cape, there's a species of zebra that lives like very high in the mountains. They're Cape Mountain zebra, and they're only native to one tiny area of all of Africa, and they only opened up to hunting a few years ago, and it's just like now, like they're just an iconic mountain animal. They were right up there where we were hunting sheep and Val Raybuck and stuff like that, totally free range. And boy, next time I go back, I'll be definitely hunting one of those. And it was just kind of one of those things. I'm going to hunt it because I saw it and loved where it lived and loved the experience.
Well, I mean, we've been to Africa a bunch of times, and like a kudu, and I mean, you got the Eastern Cape kudu, and then you've got the Greater kudu, and oh my goodness, there's something about the animal when you see it, and I still want to hunt it, right?
Yeah.
I'm being specific as to what I'm looking for now, but it doesn't mean I don't want to hunt it, right? You see that, that giant kudu up there, and you see those horns and spiral up, and I mean, we got one right behind me, right? So that's Cindy's kudu.
Yeah.
I have to get a bigger one, right?
Good luck with that. No, I mean, you're right. Kudu are one of those animals. Like, I mean, if you like hunting elk, you can hunt kudu every day of the week. And I think just about every trip we've gone to Africa, we've actually hunted kudu, and probably the next trip. I know last time we were down on the Eastern Cape, we saw a kudu there that had one horn almost sheared off, but he was probably 51 or 2 on the other horn, which is giant for on the East.
Yes.
You know, Ray was like, "Oh, too bad his horn's broken off." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Let's go hunt that thing."
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff there. Gemsbuck is also such a beautiful animal when you're down there, right? They're hard not to. I want to shoot one with a bow and arrow. I haven't shot one of those with a bow and arrow yet, so I'm looking for that nice bull to come in the blind one day, and I won't be able to help myself. It'll be what it is.
Well, it was great to get to share some African stories with you, even though we can't go to Africa this year. Talking about Africa is just about the next best thing. And, I think if people are thinking about going to Africa, I mean, it can be a multi-year planning process. I mean, I know we've gone on a month's notice before, but you're better off to do it on a year or 2 notice. So, I mean, even if it's obviously not going to probably book for this year, but if people are thinking about going next year or the year after, now's the time to start. And I think the more time you put into planning, the better hunt you're going to get for yourself. And like you say, you and Cindy have got a number of outfitters. So kind of once you find out what their budget is, what their expectations are for food and accommodations, what kind of a hunt they want, what species they want to hunt, then you can really tailor. So, I mean, there's no better time than to call you guys now. And I mean, Lord knows you have some time right now too to talk to them. So.
Well, if you can set yourself a budget, so if you can put down a deposit, basically it allows us to book the place, right? So depending on how many people the place can handle, or let's say if you want to bring another couple with you, we can basically have the camp for just you guys. So especially if you're time specific, let's say if you're a teacher and you had a spring break in there in which you can go only a certain time, or you can go during the summertime, the more time in advance you can give us, we can get that time booked for you. It gives us more time to get the cheapest flights as well for you there, with the best value. And you can start, putting away a little bit of money every month, right? So once you get started, the process starts to happen, and all of a sudden your dream comes true. You can basically go to Africa for basically 2 trips to Mexico. When you think,
that's
right?
something that a lot of people don't realize is how affordable it can be.
Right. So depending on what you're looking for, you can go to Mexico twice, and you can go to Africa one time, and you'd probably shoot 5 to 8 animals for that.
Yeah.
Right. So you can have a great hunt on a budget, right? If you really want, you just got to, get it started.
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, I want to thank you for joining us, Mark, and I hope you and Cindy are doing well during these trying times, and hope people, select Worldwide Hunting Safaris. You guys have definitely treated us well. You've got some phenomenal places to go, and I know we stopped by the odd time and had a good meal and a glass of wine too. So I want to thank you so much.
Sounds good. We'll do this in Africa again soon.
Cheers, Mark.
Okay, see you later.